Breaking news in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. Shots fired in the last 30 minutes at a demonstration after a man drove into a crowd at 11th and Pine. Thanks for joining us. I'm Aliana Gomez.
And I'm David Rose. Seattle police say they do have a suspect in custody and they have recovered the gun. One person was taken to the hospital in stable condition. Let's get right to Q13's Jennifer Lee, who's at that demonstration to give us the very latest. And Jen, what did you hear and what did you see?
Well, David and Aliana, it was intense when those gunshots were fired. We're looking straight at the line with protesters and police. And Andy's going to shift over to 11th Avenue where witnesses say a car came driving through. It could have plowed through the crowd, but actually demonstrators started throwing obstructions in the direction of the vehicle, and they say that one of the protesters went towards the driver's side of the vehicle to see what this man was up to, and they say that's when a person was shot. We also want to take you to video from the moments right after when we saw demonstrators just running down Pine Street away from all of the action, the scary moments of this that was happening. We heard people say someone has a gun in that moment. It lasted a few minutes, and then we heard Seattle police going through the announcement saying that they had a person with a firearm in custody. They have retrieved the firearm and that they believe someone was injured. We heard that EMS was able to get on the scene, and they asked people to bring the victim over to EMS. So it was very intense out here, and we've been hearing from the Seattle police chief as well as other members of the city administration that they would want to de-escalate some of that military police type presence out here. But if you come back out here live on 11th and Pine, you can see that the armored vehicle is front and centered again, just past the dozens of umbrellas that are now out here. And you could also see members of the National Guard. And then Andy had also pointed out, our photojournalist holding the camera up, that we also see members of law enforcement and National Guard up on the roof who are keeping an eye from above. So some very, very intense moments. Let's take you to sound from a witness who is out here.
A vehicle driven by a private citizen, just one person in the car, started coming up really, really, really fast towards the protesters and wouldn't yield, and people were like yelling at it. They're like, hey, slow down, slow down. It was like plowing through it. So they took one of the plastic little barrier, like little pallet things they have, and they threw it in front of the vehicle to try to slow it down. And that was probably the only reason why most of the people standing in this intersection didn't get run over or hit by that car, was the people throwing that in front of it. And once that happened, a POC male, a black male, went to the driver's side of the vehicle to try to like see what that guy was doing to inquire. He like opened the door and was like, what are you doing right now? And the second he did that, it was a white male, pulled out and shot him in the chest, and then took off on foot that way. And it was only a few minutes later the police had informed us they got the gun, they had gotten the man arrested.
As for the victim, we've been hearing that he was shot, and we've been hearing from other witnesses that he was shot in the arm. Again, he was taken away to get medical treatment. One last look here at 11th and Pine. Police are out in full force, and demonstrators say they'll continue to stay out here. We'll give you another look at the scene here coming up on Q13 News. Reporting live in Seattle, Jennifer Lee, Q13 News.
Jennifer, thank you. Just a little earlier tonight, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan and Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best held a news conference where Best announced that police would start implementing some new tactics tonight, saying that she will keep up the barriers but is going to start minimizing the police posture with fewer officers there on the line and in the immediate area. Those officers will remove some of the protective gear they've been spotted in all week. The National Guard will also be available but won't be deployed on the front line unless they're needed. Best also said in the future she's going to try to work with the community to deploy de-escalation teams to talk with the demonstrators.
The Seattle Police Department is committed to protecting people's First Amendment right to free speech. Our goal is to have absolutely no conflicts. And unfortunately, we're not able to meet this goal. We haven't been able to meet it on several occasions this week. But it is of paramount importance that we meet peace with peace. You know, my family is out there at 11th and Pine on many nights, also joining the demonstration. So I definitely want, on a personal level, to make sure that we have peace with all of the demonstrators who are at the scene. I also need to be honest with you. The standoff situation at the East Precinct is like nothing I've ever seen before.
Well, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan also announced some of her own promises tonight. Durkan says she's issuing an emergency order tomorrow to the city council to have body cameras turned on during demonstrations. Cameras were originally not recording to protect the privacy of people protesting. Officials will look at permanently banning tear gas after the 30-day ban is up. Durkan also says the Seattle Police Department will update its policies to consider the best practices for use of force, including the ban on chokeholds, firing at moving vehicles, and exhausting all options before using force.
Also in Seattle, thousands of protesters took to the streets to demand justice and police reform. It started at Othello Park and made its way to the Rainier Avenue Safeway. Q13's Brian Flores was out there and shares their message tonight.
An estimated 5,000 people came here not only calling on reform, but an end to systemic racism. It was a peaceful gathering. It was a peaceful march, but it came with a very powerful message tonight. Walking down from Othello Park, Rainier Avenue South was a sea of people. Thousands of people, young, old, all races and backgrounds coming together calling for change.
You can come right on in tight.
Even people on horseback, a group calling themselves the Black Cowboys, were there for the moment.
Very powerful moment. You know, this is history, and we're going to be a part of this history. Hopefully this movement actually makes a change.
For Andrea Klingscales and her family, being at the march was important too. And even though it's divided her family back home in Oregon, she wanted to be here.
I mean, my sister said there's no such thing as racism. Though she's my sister, I'm protesting that.
We want to raise her right. We want to raise her to understand that just because of the color of her skin doesn't mean that we're privileged over another.
Let's go! Fight the power!
Once the crowd made its way to the Rainier Avenue Safeway, the crowd heard from community leaders.
In order for Black lives to matter, Black communities have to matter.
We must organize ourselves. We must make sure the political establishment does not divide us from one another.
The event was peaceful, but for many here, impactful.
Everybody's voices matter. Every march we take matters. Everything we do matters.
And several people, including that young man who you just heard from, want more of these gatherings, more of these events taking place. I spoke with one of the organizers tonight, and he says that more of these events are planned. Tonight, we also saw hundreds of people registering to vote. In Seattle, Brian Flores, Q13 News.
Brian, thank you. Well, Black Lives Matter protest organizers invited the Bellevue police chief to join their demonstration today.
Now, here's part of what he had to say.
Please continue to do what you're doing. We're listening, we're learning, we're growing as a police department, and we're responding. So, God bless you.
This is not the first time we've seen Chief Steve Mylett bridging the divide between police and protesters. Last weekend, the chief took time to talk with peaceful demonstrators that were out in his city in Bellevue and answer questions.
Well, people who participated in protests are being urged to get tested for the coronavirus. Free testing is already available here in Seattle. There are testing sites at 2 Washington vehicle emission sites on Aurora Avenue North and in Seattle's Soto neighborhood. The city changed the criteria for testing so that now anyone can get tested, even if they're not showing symptoms. If you'd like to get tested, we have a link to the registration information on our website, q13fox.com.
Well, take a look at this video from overnight. The Hyatt Hotel downtown has had a heart outline since the COVID-19 outbreak. But as you can see, it added BLM, supporting the Black Lives Matter moment.